Hey, this is Joe from Personas. In this video, I want to help you avoid a pretty big mistake in your mixes. Who doesn't love a nice, wide stereo mix? I love it. You probably love it too. However, if you try to take something that's not stereo and make it stereo, you need to be very careful. If you're not, you'll do the mistake that I'm going to show you here today. Here is a session from a Sphere member. So Gregor and I were doing a song production critique session. Members submitted their Studio One files, we opened them up, and we picked two of them to feature in a video and to go through and talk about all the great things and all the mistakes and just kind of an overall critique of the process. This is one of the songs we did not use. However, in listening to it, I noticed this problem. And I want to show you because I want you to avoid making this mistake because it can really shoot you in the foot. So before I explain it to you, I want you to listen and then we'll talk about it. So the track in question is this red track here. It's an electric guitar track, just kind of a simple overdriven electric guitar. I'm going to hit play here at bar 17. The track comes in at bar 19. So listen to that first and then we'll talk about it. Okay, we got a nice kind of crunchy, fuzzy power chord thing happening. Looks like it was probably a loop that was brought in. So a couple of things we can know just by looking at the track. First thing we can tell is that it is a mono track. If you're not familiar with mono versus stereo, mono means one, stereo means two. So these loops up here, these tambourine and percussion loops, those are stereo because there are two waveforms. If you look at it, you'll see there's one on top and one on bottom. That is left and right, stereo, left and right. This track only has one waveform, so that's how we know that it is mono. Now the channel itself, if it's a mono track, it usually looks something like this. Let me find one. Well, these are all stereo. A mono track looks like this. Okay, you see this little button here that allows us to change the channel between being mono and stereo. So it doesn't change the audio. The audio is still mono, but we can make the channel stereo so we could put a stereo effect on there, right? Okay, just hold that in your mind for a second. So we've got this mono track on a stereo channel, and we've already listened to it. Sounds okay, right? No big deal. Now I want to listen to it again in mono. If you didn't know this, in Studio One, if you go down to the very bottom of the screen, right here next to tempo and this meter, there's a button here. And this allows us to switch the mix from being in stereo to being in mono. Stereo meaning left and right, mono meaning we combine them together and just listen to it up the center. So it's not going to be stereo now, but let's just take a listen and see what happens now that we're listening in mono. Where'd the guitars go? The guitars have disappeared. Now, if you already know what the problem is, you're nodding your head saying, I know what happened. But if you don't, you may be wondering, what kind of voodoo magic is Joe doing to make that guitar disappear? It's not voodoo magic. It is the result of a mistake in the mixing and production process. So let me open up this channel, open up the mixer, see if you can spot the mistake. Here's the channel here, this red one there. Can you see where this person went wrong? If your attention is drawn to this top part of the channel, you would be correct. So if you don't know, there's a new feature we added. It's not that new. It's a couple of years old, but I love it. It's called the input controls feature. If you click this box under the wrench inside the mixer, it adds this simple little section up here that lets us adjust the trim or the input gain of that channel. It also lets us flip the polarity, or some people call it phase. Now, polarity and phase is this idea that if a waveform is going like this, right, it goes up and then down. If we flip that, then it goes down and then up, okay? We've just flipped the shape of the waveform, basically, simplified terms. But if we take one that is right side up and another that is upside down and we put them right on top of each other, they cancel each other out. So this is volume up, this is volume down, so the net result is a straight horizontal line of silence. That's what's happening with this track. This person, in an attempt to make this mono guitar sound better, decided to flip the polarity of one side. while it does give a kind of a false sense of stereo when you're listening in stereo, it causes the track to disappear completely in mono. So if I take this track, he panned it to a little to the left, we'll pan it right up the middle, and we'll listen to it by itself right now in stereo. So here's the original track without any polarity stuff messed with it. Here's what that sounds like. Okay, very cool. Now, look what happens when I flip the polarity of one side and I hit play. Very cool. It went from right up the middle to this nice wide sound, right? No, because look what happens if I do this again while listening in mono. So I come down here, set it to mono. Now we're listening to just this guitar. I'll start it without it flipped, and then I will flip it, see what happens. What the what? We've just canceled out the entire signal. It's all there, it's all playing, but now the left and the right are complete opposites of one another, and it's like a math problem. This one is +6, this one's -6. The end result, the answer, the sum is 0. That's what's happening here. So in the mix, when we're listening in stereo, it doesn't disappear entirely because one of them's coming out of one speaker, one of them's coming out of another, but it does cause this weird kind of, almost makes you want to turn your head when you listen to it because it's out of phase. You hear that? It's like one speaker's pushing, the other is pulling. That's kind of the idea. It's actually physically what's happening. So you hear it a little bit in stereo, and then in the mix, it might sound even a little bit better. But then, if you listen to this at a club where all the speakers are just mono signals, or you listen to it from your phone that's basically just, sometimes they're a little bit stereo, but generally it's a single point source, it's going to sound like this and your guitar is going to disappear. You're going to go listen in your car, and because of those phase issues, it's either going to disappear entirely or it's going to be way too quiet. Then you listen on headphones and you're like, okay, I hear it there, but then it disappears again in mono. This is the problem. This is the source of the issue. The real solution here is don't make it stereo, or if you want to make it stereo, the only real way to do this without causing phase issues is to just double it. Like literally get a different guitar part playing something similar and then pan one left and one right. The answer is not to duplicate this track and then pan one left and right. You'll get the same issue. It'll either sound exactly the same in mono, or you'll try to nudge one forward and backward to create a stereo sound, and it does the same thing. It causes phase issues where the guitar disappears either mostly or entirely when you sum it down to mono. Now, some people will say, Joe, we're all listening on headphones and earbuds. Why does this matter? Because we're not always listening on headphones and earbuds, right? Someone's going to listen to it in their car, which makes things sound a little more mono, or they're listening on a single speaker Bose thing out in the yard during a picnic, and your guitar's just disappeared. Do you want your guitars to disappear? I don't think you want your guitars to disappear. So don't do this. Don't come in and flip the side of one. Honestly, this, you should be flipping it entirely, and I only do that when I'm working with drums and I need to flip the phase of the overheads perhaps. Flipping one side over the other is almost never the answer, to the point where I would say, if you ever do this, I would say, unless something terrible happened to the tracks before you received them, this is probably wrong, don't do it. Now, it's not your fault. The person who submitted this, it's not your fault. You didn't know. But now, if you're wondering why your guitar keeps disappearing when you render it out and go listen to it elsewhere, this is why. All right, thanks so much for watching. If you like videos like this where we kind of unpack common mistakes, the goal here isn't to shame anyone. I've made these mistakes. I've made so many mistakes over the years. That's part of why I've gotten good at this, is because I've made a bunch of mistakes. Part of me feels like I wish I had videos like this when I was starting out so that I would avoid some of these mistakes. If you like stuff like this, let us know. Otherwise, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.